All right. So my number three is a movie called Doubt from 2008, directed by John Patrick Shanley, starring Meryl Streep, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Amy Adams, and Viola Davis. Stacked cast. Quick logline. A Catholic school principal questions a priest's ambiguous relationship with a troubled young student. So for me, the reason why I put this, and there are many sort of anxiety driving things in this movie in
Hmm.
general, just the subject matter itself, but I can almost kind of put a pin in that of kind of what causes anxiety. But to me, it's more about just not knowing what the truth is.
Hmm.
And maybe this comes from a place of me wanting to have a sense of control on the information I have and how other people feel, how I feel, who's done what. This has been a childhood thing for me from the very beginning of time since I can remember, when people were being kind of shifty or
Mm.
not being honest. And always I could pick up on that at a very, very young age. And even watching movies with my mom and dad, I would constantly be asking, is this the bad guy? Is this the good guy? Is this a good girl? Like my mom had to stop me that you need to sort of step out of the room because I
Yeah.
really wanted to know like what was right, what was wrong. And this movie is exactly about that, which is sort of the moral, personal, emotional ambiguity of life and people. And and the movie sort of really plays with that. But before I get too further, had you watched this movie before? And if not, and if so, how did this land on you from an anxiety standpoint?
Yeah, I'd never seen this film before, and I can get in my thoughts about the film in a bit. It just didn't really work for me, but I think the anxiety piece that definitely resonated was that feeling when much like Meryl Streep's character in the film, she knows, quote unquote, that Philip Seymour Hoffman did this thing and is hurting kids essentially.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't have no proof. She just feels that it's right. And I've
Mm-hmm.
definitely been in situations, whether it's work or personal life, where I'm like, I just believe this is definitely this is the truth. And I
Yeah.
feel like I know it. And then when you basically get what you want because of that, there's an immediate set, at least for me, of like, wait, actually, maybe I wasn't so right about that. Like immediately sets in, and that can turn into guilt. And I think definitely
Yeah.
that's where Meryl Streep's character gets to in this film too. She finally does get what she wants. People believe her, and Philip Seymour Hoffman basically has to leave the parish. And then
Mm-hmm.
immediately she's like, "Oh, wait, actually, I don't know now." Like it's when you suddenly get that validation of everyone say, okay, fine, your gut is right. I mean, for me personally, I immediately start questioning that. So I could
Yeah.
totally relate to her character in this film, where you just have this sense of I don't know why, but I feel this way, and I'm just gonna keep saying that and saying that and saying that, no matter what. I have no evidence, and it doesn't matter because I just know it.
Yeah.
And then you
100%.
maybe you can never know. I mean, and this movie leaves it ambiguous too. You don't really
Yeah.
know if he actually is molesting kids or being inappropriate. You have no idea. There is no
Yeah.
evidence presented to you as the viewer.
Yeah.
You just have to trust Meryl Streep, I guess, and her gut.
And your own instinct, right? Like that's why this movie is very interesting to me, is that it doesn't wrap it all up in a neat bow.
Mm-hmm.
And throughout the movie, your allegiances are shifting because, and this is sort of how life is as well. And
Mm-hmm.
people can be like that, that it sort of really pokes at the gray of life and people. Because yeah, on one hand, Philip Seymour Hoffman, you see him, he's sort of joking and sort of a loud mouth. And I
Mm-hmm.
love those scenes of the contrast between the sisters and Philip Seymour Hoffman with the bishops, like the eating scenes, like the
Oh
contrast of
yeah.
those, right? That
Mm-hmm.
there they are kind of eating meat and drinking wine and even making fun of other people and other women and such.
Right.
Meanwhile,
Smoking, having a good time.
smoking, having a good
Yeah.
time. And meanwhile, on the sister side, it's like a very quiet, you know kind of solitude underlying kind of way of eating food and provocation and such. So it's very interesting that you kind of think that, oh yeah, of course a person like Philip Seymour Hoffman who lives that kind of life has
Mm-hmm.
probably done something bad. But I think to me the biggest kind of pivotal point in the movie is when Viola Davis,
Yeah.
who's the kid's mother, who enters and everything changes essentially, because by then the audience has sort of made up their mind. And most of us are on Meryl's side that, okay, there's something fishy here, there's something wrong here. Even though we don't know all the facts, we have no
Mm-hmm.
real evidence, but you sort of feel it in your bones. But then she comes in and changes the level, the playing field, where it's not even about did he do it or not. It's more about what actually matters
Right.
for the boy's safety and success, and where does he go from here and such. And there are complications with the father, which is her husband, and such. So there's just a lot of messiness at play, which is what I love about this movie, I think.
The movie's not making a call right or wrong about what to do in these situations. It's leaving a lot up to the audience to
Yeah.
decide, well, is that right of Viola Davis to make that trade-off, basically be okay with her son potentially
Also that,
getting
yeah.
molested, but it's the price is she's willing to pay that, because if this child was moved out of the school, his whole life might be ruined. And you
Yeah.
kind of understand, okay, well, maybe I get where her calculations are coming from. And with Meryl too, it's just, I mean, I guess with that, it's more she's so upset, I think, with Philip Seymour Hoffman being more loosey goosey or trying to be more modern and do new things with his parish, that she's just against. She doesn't feel like that's the right path to go. So then I sort of assume that that's why she might have been seeing these things in here with him, because she wanted to, because she didn't like him anyway. She was annoyed at him anyway, and was like, "Oh, well, this now to me looks fishy because I didn't like this person to begin with. Facts be damned. I just have a feeling if I don't
Some
like this
people
person."
are like that.
They
Yeah.
totally are. They
Yeah.
definitely are.
You just don't like somebody, so their actions land on you in a totally different way. Although in this scenario, I feel like in addition to her not liking him because he's sort of out there and more modern and
Mm-hmm.
friendly and such, I think this particular sin, if you will, of abuse of this nature, I think seems to have like a different meaning for her. And
Mm.
it could be that maybe she's experienced that herself in the past. Maybe
Mm.
she's seen this. Maybe she didn't say anything even when she knew that this was going on in a past life. It
Right.
seems to kind of bring out something very deep seated inside of her. And then we haven't mentioned Amy Adams's
Mm.
character, who I think is the audience surrogate,
Right.
who is sort of learning on the fly what information is being thrown at her. Most people, like Amy Adams' character, are conflict averse. They want things to be fine. They want
Right.
things to be okay. And you see that immediately the moment he says something that which clears the thing up, and she's like, oh, there you go, this was all a misunderstanding, everything is fine, we can go back to life as if nothing happened.
Right.
So and that to me is so interesting, right? This is how people are. So you get really different points of view. People are trying to poke the issue, whether there's an issue there or not. There are
Mm-hmm.
people who are trying to just avoid the issue entirely. And then there's somebody who's the actual perpetrator who's also playing games. So
Potential perpetrator.
potential
We don't
perpetrator,
know. We still
exactly.
don't
We
know.
don't
Yeah.
know.
Right.
Alleged.
Right. Alleged. That's a better word for it. Yeah.
Which is amazing because I think it's a stand-in for people. It's a stand-in for societies at large,
Mm-hmm.
which is why this thing works to, at least in my mind, on so many different levels. You mentioned that the film didn't kind of work for you.
Yeah. I found it kind of boring. Took a long time to get quote unquote started. It was maybe like 20 or 30 minutes before the plot kind of like really kicked in. And it definitely was a movie that lives or dies by the performances. It's a
Oh yeah,
performance based film. I thought Philip Seymour Hoffman was amazing in
amazing.
this film. An actor I love, and his performance was great. I don't know, something with Meryl for some reason wasn't working for me. It's just a
Mm,
little, the hamness was dialed up a little
mm,
bit too much, and the Bronx accent, which
mm,
is crazy because we've talked about in this podcast many times. Even our Meryl episode, folks can go back and listen to it. She is the accent queen. She always
right.
nails the accents. And this one like went in and out a little bit for me. I didn't, it was
Interesting.
very odd. I didn't think she was kind of nailing the accent, and it felt a little bit too showy of a performance a bit. Like
Mm,
she was trying to, which is also antithetical to what we also mentioned in that episode where she usually kind of lets the other actors have their time in the spotlight and she doesn't try to take center stage. And this one, for some reason, I kind of felt like she was doing that. I don't know. It's
mm,
like her performance, oddly for me, just didn't really work, and that made this movie not really hold up, or not hold up, but overall kind of work together. I think the theme I definitely resonate with me a lot, and all the things you're talking about, the different people in this, or characters representing different aspects of society, different types of people. I can see
mhm,
all that, but it didn't hold my interest, I guess, is the best way to put it.
mhm.
Which
Yeah.
was surprising because it's got a lot of acclaim. Like I kind of missed
Yeah.
this at the time. It got a lot of Oscar nominations and buzz and things. I just didn't get around to it. So it was always a film that it was like, okay, one day I definitely want to get back to Doubt.
Mm.
But yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's too built up in my head too. There's always that.
Could be that too. Yeah, I would agree. Her performance is a little bit dialed up. And when I first watched it, I remember sort of feeling that even more. And over time, I've maybe I've just said this to myself that, oh, maybe that's the point, because
Yeah.
she's supposed to be this person who is kind of the king or the queen of her castle, and they kind of show that kind of everybody fears her from the very beginning. And maybe so she's supposed to be a little bit larger than life and a little bit more theatrical. The accent part, I don't know, because I'm no expert in accents, especially in the Bronx accent. So I have no idea if it's like in and out or no. But from a filmmaking standpoint, I actually give a lot of credit to John Patrick Shanley, who
Hmm.
wrote the play. This was a play first, then it's made into a movie, and
You could
often
tell,
those
I
you can
think you
tell. But
yeah.
I also think what they did with the amazing Howard Shore score,
Hmm.
really opening this up and kind of using metaphors of street life from the 40s and various metaphors like that are kind of tied to Philip Seymour Hoffman's sermon of kind of those shots of the pillows being all ripped apart and
Right.
feathers flying all over and such.
Hmm.
I think the movie, as much as it can, even though it's a chamber piece, it's expanded quite elegantly, I think, because you do get a sense of place. You could all be locked into rooms the way this would be on the stage, but even the walk that Viola and Meryl take
Yeah.
outside, like it really matters. Like the wind, the way it's blowing in different places, almost like this kind of moral conscience, kind of knocking at you. That's what the wind is, I think.
Yeah,
And
no, definitely. That was my
so,
favorite scene in the film.
yeah, that's
That
the favorite scene. Yeah,
that scene with them. And it's like Viola's, is that her only scene basically too? She's not really in the movie much. I thought
it's
she was
just
going
two
to be in,
scenes
but
and
like what a
steals
knockout
it.
this put her on the map,
Amazing.
right? Wasn't this the one that
Yep.
everyone was like, who's this
Yep.
actor? She's got to
Yep.
be the next thing. She was
Yep.
great in this.
She's
I did like
amazing
that
in it.
scene.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm a fan of this movie. Weirdly enough, even given the subject matter expert, and maybe I should have said this up front. To me, that's the other thing, that a movie that is anxiety driving has, at least for me, has to be personal enough that I actually want to go and see it. Because there's so many movies that are very, very high on the anxiety quotient, but I never want to watch them again.
Yeah,
There's
yeah, yeah, yeah.
something about this movie and all my movies that I actually do want to go and watch them again, because I learned something about myself, and they push me. And this whole thing around kind of not knowing the truth and being uncomfortable about not having full control is something that I've always wrestled with. And I think this
Hmm.
movie really pokes at that, but does it in a way that's entertaining and enjoyable as well. For even though the subject matter is so dark.
Sure, sure. Again, interesting contrast to my list, and not to give a spoiler about what the film is, but the number one film on my list was a movie I saw once and vowed I'd never see again because I couldn't take
Right.
it, and I had to watch again for this podcast. And I'm actually kind of glad I did. And I think the movie doesn't drive me up the wall as much, but we'll get to that later in the episode. A little bit of a teaser.
Yeah, those movies I just don't watch them, so
Yeah,
they
yeah,
mean nothing to me. As I said up front, I tune
yeah.
out.
Hey there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I cover a topic around important people, places, events, and moments in our lives, and then explore it through 3 of our favorite movies. Subscribe right now, or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.